guys. It's good. So that's a good thing about having two co-hosts in case something does happen that doesn't totally prevent me from starting the show. Like the last time we had tonight's guest that was supposed to come on, I believe it was a DOS attack that we had, and I couldn't do anything, and it was unfortunate that I had to cancel. But we got him back on, so we would like to welcome Bob Fletcher to the show. Bob, how's it going?
Okay, are you hearing me all right?
I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, that's good. Sounds that's exciting compared to the last 10 minutes here. Okay.
So, all right. Hello, Bob.
Very good. Where are we going? I don't have any idea at this point in time. Do you want me to? Would you like me to give an introduction to those folks who may not know who I am at all, or what direction would you like to go?
Absolutely. If you want to if you want to tell everyone who you are and everything, it's all you right now, Mr. Fletcher.
Okay,
yeah, man. What's your story?
I greatly appreciate it. Basically, for those folks who don't know who I am, I've been doing congressional and senatorial investigations for probably 20 years, basically chasing corrupted persons in our government. And that's started out a long time ago. I won't go into all of the background of how I got involved with that, but I became a federal witness in that 1985-87 period of time with the Iran-Contra inquiries, for those of you that are old enough to recall that, as a matter of fact, because that's been about 25 years ago, I guess, at this time. And I had gotten mixed up into the middle of Iran-Contra Central Intelligence, supplying of weapons and drugs, et cetera, with by simply merging my company with an existing company in Atlanta, Georgia, that in fact was a covert front for supplying of weapons for all these random wars that the intelligence agencies of the United States like to maintain worldwide. And, of course, lining the pockets of all those guys that are supplying the weapons on the behalf of our, what I refer to the secret government, so to speak, has nothing to do with the people that you think are running the United States. And so that's been a real roller coaster ride for myself. What happened was that I was, like I say, we merged our company. All of a sudden, I was in the middle of this stuff, and I couldn't believe what was going on. These guys, including major generals, et cetera, coming in and out of my company, which, by the way, was a toy company. And the idea was for them to use the toy company as a covert front for all this crazy stuff that they're doing on a regular basis. And to my surprise, once we got into investigating it, myself and my lawyer, in an attempt to reclaim my business, which they had basically taken over and completely stolen. When I got into it, we found out that they do this stuff all the time, that they actually will take companies over and use them as reasons for visiting a country or going in and out of countries, et cetera, and carrying out their supplying of the weapons and all. So if you guys have any questions, I would jump in, please, if you will, if you have anything you want to ask. But the main point of today's program on my side of it is to let people know that there is an extremely radical element that is on the offing, and that is Planet X, which is, and some people call it Nibiru. A couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, after doing 25 to 27 years of investigations into government fraud and theft and all of the related bandits that are running the country up there, and being involved directly with about 8 or 10 of some of the biggest investigations in the last 20 years, I realized that we were missing huge amounts of money, much more money than what is normally vanishing out of Washington, D.C., into the pockets of those guys that are on the bad side of the fence. We had gotten used to chasing multi-millions dollars of financing that and fraud, bank fraud, and like I say, the sales of weapons and the exchange for weapons right out of the White House with drug dealers on a huge scale, and we got used to investigating that. But all of a sudden, it dawned on me that we were starting to lose much more money, and I couldn't figure out how that money could, where it could go, because we're talking trillions of dollars, not even millions or billions. But a couple of major persons in our government had admitted that trillions had disappeared out of their budgets, and they had no idea where it was going. You guys there? Are you guys still on the line there, or you fall asleep?
Yeah, sorry.
I lose you?
No,
Oh.
I had myself.
Okay, go ahead.
I was trying to talk. I was like, wait a second, what's wrong?
Yeah.
So,
I didn't mean...
man, keep going.
Excuse me?
Absolutely. So how I guess to what level is this still going on today? I mean,
Okay. Well, here's the point. This is what happened. About 3 years ago, when I had information coming across my desk as it related to this giant sums of money vanishing. No longer were we talking about a senator or a congressman pulling off some kind of a scam one way or another to get a couple $1 million for his summer house in Tahiti or something like that. We were looking at, to my shock, Donald Rumsfeld, who was in charge of the Defense Department at this particular point in time, on the day before the 9/11 event took place. He was sitting answering questions before a congressional committee with whom I had done work, and he said that over the last few years, it's been realized that $2.3 trillion had vanished from the Defense Department budget. It's just unaccounted for. And we're talking with a T, $1 trillion. And that's mind-boggling, because you can't, you can't even money launder $1 trillion. How would you ever even do that? If it was just a regular theft of, like I say, of a few million, that's one thing. But for $2.3 trillion to vanish out of their budgeting at the Defense Department is like a mind-boggling. And they're also talking about the timing here. Now, this was the day before the 9/11 the event would. Okay, so
I was just going to ask, right?
Right, and so obviously we never heard that story again. I mean, we have it on videotape of him doing this, admitting that they lost a couple of $1 trillion. But of course, the next day was 9/11. End of story. We never heard it again, and we were occupied, of course, with all of the aftermath of we'll call it a terrorist event. I won't get into that tonight, but I'm sure it was not an outside terrorist event, but that it was probably a what we call a false flag operation carried out by some of our own corrupted persons in government here. But as a matter of fact, coincidentally, again, and I say that word completely in a joking manner, the missile that they told us it was an airplane, but the missile that went into the side of the Pentagon was right into the building area where all of the paperwork for this vanished $2.3 trillion would have been held. That, I guess, was rather also kind of coincidental. So that was all gone anyhow. I guess if anybody was going to try to look into it, they would have a hard time doing that.
Right. Yeah, just use a missile to destroy the evidence, sure.
So I'm sitting here and I'm looking and I see, what's going on with that kind of money disappearing. Then the lady who was theoretically in charge of oversight with the Federal Reserve, she had sat before the Congress a short time later and said that somebody brought it up. One of the congressmen asked her what was the story behind the fact that there's been $9 trillion. Again, $9 trillion with a T, that seemingly is off the books and misplaced relative to some loans and money that was put into from our Federal Reserve here in the United States, lent out to the European banks. It's $9 trillion that had vanished. And then following that up, or running almost side by side, we had Representative Ron Paul had stepped forward, and he had said, went to the Federal Reserve and said, there's too much information indicating that all the gold is gone from Fort Knox.
Yep.
And he said, we want to request on the behalf of the Senate, the Congress, and the American people a complete audit on the gold. Well, the Federal Reserve System, which was set up so many years ago, is specifically set up in a manner such that the Senate and the Congress and the United States citizens have no right whatsoever to ever request an audit. It was specifically set up that way.
Yep.
The Federal Reserve, which has nothing to do with the United States government, that comes to a big surprise for a lot of people, but the Federal Reserve is a group of private banks that oversees and runs and controls all of the funding of the United States government, as well as oversees the Fort Knox gold inventory. All right? And they are private banks. It is not a division of the United States government officially, period. End of story. And so when they set it up to be the people that did control, the bankers that did control all of our money and financing, et cetera, they set it up specifically. So they told Ron Paul and senators and congressmen to just get out of their face and go away because they weren't even going to talk to them. They had no right to even ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so I'm sitting here with starting again. I had about 8 or 9 months at that time into looking into where all this money was going, and I couldn't imagine my wildest dreams what could go on with that. You just can't. You can't load that up and take it someplace. Like I say, you can't money launder trillions of dollars. So I then, of course, had constantly receiving information from people all over the different levels of our government and friends of mine out of the intelligence agencies and what have you. And this going back, a full over 25 years. And someone came to me and reminded me of the underground facilities that were being built all the same period of time. By the way, the funny stuff started seriously about 1983 to 85, which was a period of time when we were into that Iran-Contra stuff. Ronald Reagan was president. George Bush, who was really running the show, was vice president. And all of this, a lot of changes in huge projects. Defense Department money, they were talking about doing this Star Wars initiative where they're going to put up a whole bunch of series of satellites that was going to track when a flea farts in Omaha, could tell you where the flea was located and all that kind of stuff. And they were going to track everything that the Russians or the Red Chinese were going to do. They were going to be able to track it down and all of that. That was all this Star Wars gobbledygook, which I found out later everything that they did put up in the Star Wars operations, these telescopes and satellites and transmission sensing devices and all of that, were actually aimed outwards. They were not aimed at the Earth to keep track of things. They were aimed outward to outer space. And of course, like I say, it also was a time when they started doing what was called the continuity of government. They had huge expansions of what was called continuity of government, and that was where these underground facilities came back to surface. All right. So what we're talking about in terms of these, there's over 100 of them in the United States today, and these are entire small cities, so to speak, underground all over the place in America, and they are specifically survival locations of facilities for limited numbers of people. Although with 100 of them, and some of them are pretty large, a lot of people could be underground and live under there for quite a while. So at that point, and I was really very much up to speed on these, so to speak, because going back to the 90s, I had myself, with a friend of mine, snuck down under the Denver airport, which for many years had been rumored to be a huge underground operation, a huge facility like we're talking about. And on the very first week that it was opened in 1995, I had already been bombarded with people telling me what was going on underground there. And I didn't even understand it, couldn't imagine really at that point what they were talking about. Why would we be building giant underground like rats and moles under the ground at a tremendous cost factor? So I did sneak down underneath, and I got pictures way back in the 90s. But that was something I was involved with, investigations with Sonny Bono on drugs and smuggling right out of the White House, and investigating it with him and 2 or 3 other people. I was working with Henry Gonzalez on some other bank fraud things that we were trying to chase at that time. So these crazy pictures of underground facilities was something that I just put on the back shelf and hadn't gotten into in terms of trying to find out what was really going on. So I then moved into a situation where I was trying to figure out what would it be that would cause us to be so concerned with the need for underground survival facilities at a tremendous cost. So someone said to me, how about the stuff that's going on in China and in Russia and Red China and in England, a couple of European countries at the same time? And I said, well, what are you talking about? And they said, no, the underground, same situation, underground hideouts. So apparently the Russians in 2010 put out a mandate of their own that they were going to create 5,000 underground facilities, not big ones like we have in America, but 5,000 of them, and a couple of them were going to be big, and some of them were, a couple of the larger ones had already been underway for a while. And they were going to have these accomplished by the end of 2013, coming into the first of 2014. And I checked into it, and I found out that they had, in fact, completed it, that they did have 5,000 of these facilities as shelter survival locations for many thousands of people. So now what we had is the Russians doing it, the same thing being done in Europe in several different countries. The Red Chinese had gone and started converting what was a couple of thousand underground tunnel facilities that literally had been in China going back 1,000 years. They're back in the old days of antiquity. They used to fight wars by running in and out of these underground tunnels back when they were still doing bows and arrows and throwing rocks at each other. But they had a lot of them started already, 1,000 of them. So the Red Chinese had gone in and updated those and completed them the same as we had in the United States here for our 100 and 103 or whatever we have here. So then
so
I really... yes.
Do they need a seed bank for this? Because I recently read that Russia was building a seed bank for all life on Earth.
Well, actually, now I'm not dead positive on Russia, but there is one that was built back in 2006. It's a huge international seed bank, which actually you have to, and by the way, this is cooperatively done by the United States and several other nations cooperatively, and a lot of excuse me, I was going to say a lot of the funding came from not only, of course, just they steal it whenever they want money, they just steal it out of the covert black operations anyhow. Nobody's allowed to look at it, so it's pretty easy money. But a good amount of that money was supplied by, what's his name, the computer, the fellow and his wife that's so wealthy from the computer's success. Bill Gates, I'm sorry, just slipped his name. Bill Gates put in donated millions and millions of dollars just into that one seed bank, and I believe it's located in Denmark, actually. Now, there are 2 or 3 other locations of seed banks. Basically, what these are what you would call storage facilities to maintain the seeds necessary to replant the entire face of the earth when it's totally wiped out. That's basically the essence of it, to have the seeds necessary after some type of a total wipeout of the globe, and to actually have the seeds to replant everything necessary, like Noah's Ark, to regenerate the growing of all the products and plants and trees and everything when they've been wiped out from a global disaster. Now, there's, again, as I say, this one that I think is in Denmark, near Denmark. There's Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Iceland are all donating in terms of maintaining it. That's a large, pretty big facility. That one I think originally was, I don't remember, it was something like $20 million to get off the ground. They had millions of seeds in there as we speak. It's pretty well completed. It was started 2006 and it's done as we speak. Okay, so that adds to it. See, now we have these couple of giant seed vaults. We have all the major nations of the world secretly, not tremendously secret, but for the most part pretty much secret, building these underground facilities. Now, and filling them, by the way, for the last 5 years, filling them with the freeze-dried survival foods by the thousands of tons, truckloads after truckloads. And we're talking, by the way, these facilities, I'm just back to the United States, their facilities that they've created are so huge that they have 18-wheelers, 40-footers drive side by side in the roadways underground, and complete railways, which are actually magnetic levitated railways interconnecting many of the facilities from one state to another, traveling at the trains are traveling at 400 to 500 miles an hour. They're magnetic levitated, nothing touched the tracks. They're like the good ones that they have in Japan that they have already installed above ground, traveling at 400 miles an hour, but the ones down under in the underground facilities are even faster. There's absolutely no way for them to wreck, so to speak. There's nothing on the tracks, nothing crosses the tracks, and when you get in it to go to another location, they just seal the doors like a subway in New York City. Close the doors, you sit down, belt yourself in, and it just goes swoosh, and again, it's up to 500 miles an hour in a few seconds, and then they slow down, and you get out at your next location. The construction of these underground facilities has been done with gigantic drills that are mind-boggling. And by the way, the Chinese have bigger ones than we do, and the ones that we have, the smallest ones, can go in through the side of a mountain. They travel 6 or 7 miles an hour, digging, literally like drilling a huge hole. Yes, sir.
You're cutting off there, buddy.
Oh, I am? Okay.
Yeah, okay, it seems to be better.
Am I okay now?
Maybe it was me. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh-oh, your head is
I've
cutting
seen
off.
those drills you're talking about, and it had an Air Force logo on it. I don't know. I think they were in Nevada, but yeah, they were drilling underground with this just big drill.
This completely reminds me of that Ozarks from that Jesse Ventura conspiracy theory episode. That's crazy.
Yes, Jesse's. That, by the way, and Jesse went into one location there, for a little bit underground. It is in the Ozarks, the one you're talking about. It's slick. What they did was that's been there. That one has actually been there for a few years, and it's been labeled as an underground general storage area. But when they're ready to utilize it the way they're planning to utilize it, along with the rest of them, it will be full time as a survival living facility for the limited few. I have finished doing. It took me 3 years of my investigation on this alone. Now, I have to say something out in front. Because I had dealt with Senate and congressional leaders for so many years, and I've literally was a federal witness. I have testified personally before the United States Senate Intelligence Committee in Washington, D.C. One of my huge reports that I did, I believe, is what got Sonny Bono murdered on the ski slopes, because we were 15 days away from opening up a congressional investigation into drug smuggling and weapons supplies out of Washington, D.C., connected to the intelligence community.
Right, it would be the CIA, like they say.
Absolutely. They had contacted us. I'd worked with Sonny, supplied him with an amazing array of information for about a year. He had called me, his offices contacted me about December the 15th or something like that, and they said, we are all set to go. Sonny and the rest of the Congress is going on their Christmas holiday. The first thing we're doing back here in Washington, and by the way, I was living in Los Angeles at that time, they said the first thing we are doing after the Christmas holidays, when Sonny gets back, we have the investigation ready to start. We wanted to make sure that you were prepared to come into Washington and move forward with us on it. I told them I was excited to do it. I was ready to do it. Let's go, because we had fooled around with this thing for over a year in terms of just setting it up. And the investigation was not only going to be a congressional inquiry, but it was going to be with subpoena powers. And normally they never do that, and they don't permit it, because what happens, then you have some senators and congressmen that are carrying out these different inquiries with the ability to force government persons to answer the question. Do you know anything about drugs coming into our Air Force bases? Do you know anything about this picture that Mr. Fletcher supplied us, which is a motion picture of the delivery of narcotics on a United States aircraft and being offloaded at air bases at the Homestead Air Force Base? Are you familiar? And with subpoena powers, they can say, answer the question or we will put you in jail until you decide to cooperate.
Right.
They don't usually do that. And Sonny's people told me, we have subpoena power set up. And so I said, great, when are we talking about? They said it'd be about the 15th or the 17th after they come back of January, after they finish the Christmas holidays. Once they get back, we'll get back to you, and then we'll go from there. I said, great. 10 days after that telephone conversation, Sonny Bono was murdered on the top of the ski slopes. He was pistol whipped to death and dragged up against a tree, and everybody was told that he was an idiot and ran into a tree.
Right.
An end of story. Ha ha, Sonny Bono, and he's out of here, and that was the end. Now, the bad guys involved with this stuff, okay, and we're getting away from my subject, but I'll get back to that right away. But the bad guys that are involved with these things, they had to eliminate Sonny over the Christmas holiday. End of story. They could not allow him to come back because they couldn't allow the investigation to ever begin with the first gaveling of the opening of the committee investigation. They could not do that because if Sonny had been eliminated after that, they would have to continue the inquiry.
Right.
So they had to stop the inquiry. The only way to do it was to stop and eliminate Sonny Bono, and they murdered him on the ski slopes. That was the end of it. No one out of his office, who I had dealt with for 4 years. I used to go in, when I went in Washington, I would sit down and have lunch with the guys, all right? Well, have a cup of coffee, whatever the situation was. I had dealt with them for 4 years leading up to this thing. From the moment that Sonny was dead on the ski slopes, no one ever spoke to me again out of Sonny's offices.
Wow. I guess not. Wow. Not surprised.
End of story. They would not even answer. I mean, I was friends. The guy that run his office, Frank Cullen, his main primary assistant, and the administrative assistants are the guys that really run the offices for the Senate and the Congress. You know, they're number one guys. He and I went back several years. He never spoke to me again.
Right.
Now, I found out there was 2 or 3 other close people to Sonny that had the same situation where nobody ever spoke to him again. He just, even personal friends of Sonny's. So they put the serious scare on everybody that was working with Sonny. So anyhow, we get back to the subject matter. So we have all these facilities underground. We were talking about the drills. The drills are so large that a single drill goes into the side of a mountain, comes back out, and you could drive an 18-wheeler into the hole that they just made. That's how big they are. Now, they have gotten bigger, and the ones in China make ours look like toys. The ones that the Chinese have developed, stealing our original designs, of course, you know, by stealing the designs that we had created our drills with, they have what they have is the biggest one that impressed me, and I, by the way, have photographs of all this stuff and live footage and what have you of inside these underground facilities. And by the way, I want to tell everybody right now, particularly people that don't know me, and there's some arenas I'm very, very well known, and others may not know who I am. My website on the computer, my website is bobfletcherinvestigations.com. It's Bob Fletcher Investigations, one word, .com. Go on there, you'll see all of the reports and what I've done and my history, my background, and you will see that I have DVD reports on about 8 or 9 of my biggest investigations, and of course, and including, by the way, a 2-year investigation that I did on Sonny's death, which absolutely proves that he was murdered. But again, we'll shift gears back to today. I have, after 3 years working, we've just finally released the DVD. It's a double DVD package. It's actually 2 discs of 2 hours each. It's a 4-hour information disc, educational disc on what we're getting at right now. I have included in there live footage and photographs of the underground facilities, the drills, the locations, and everything I'm going to talk about tonight is completely documented in the visual DVDs that are available. So if you want to know what's going to happen, and I'm getting around to the point of what we are actually talking about here, when you want to know all of it and understand what's taking place, get this DVD. It'll completely set you back on your heels. So now let me get back to subject matter. We've got all these underground facilities and these giant drills. The Chinese one I was talking about, I want to finish that. The Chinese, they have a drill that is actually 3 drills across, face the front end. If you're facing them, they're like huge circular drills. The one on the left and the one on the right are big enough for an 18-wheeler to drive into the hole that one of them would make. They have one drill that is one of those huge drills on each side, and then in the middle is one larger drill that if you were inclined to do so, you could stack an 18-wheeler on top of another 18-wheeler and drive in through that thing. So you have 3 across the face of the drills that they've been using in China. I do have photographs of inside the Chinese tunnels. I have the information and pictures on the ones in Russia, and we have, of course, the complete, actually live footage of inside the tunnels and the underground hideouts in the United States. Some of these are created where they are primarily going to grow greens and foodstuffs underground, complete setup, greenhouse configurations underground to be able to continue fresh vegetables and animals and fish underground in these specialized growing facilities. And again, they're all interconnected by highways big enough to have drag races on them. And they're mind-boggling. I do have a couple of these photos that I'm talking about are on my website. You actually can go look up the website and then look where it says photographs and photo gallery, I think is what it says. And we have several photographs, wonderful pictures of down inside these facilities that have been totally filled with freeze-dried survival foods. Now, when I was investigating this, I was still in a quandary. What in the world on earth would it be to cause these people, number one, to stop stealing as much as they were for their own pockets and start putting all this money into these rat holes underground, these survival facilities, which includes, by the way, one that recently had been completed under the Capitol building that will hold 3,000 people. And they've expanded underground facilities at the White House. In other words, entire facilities for living that weren't there before that are now under the White House. Not that the president's ever going to be there, because more than likely he's going to be long gone before the stuff hits the fan in one of the bigger, better facilities. They had taken the NORAD facility, which is the one that's inside the Granite Mountain for 40 years, that's been there, that was always there and doing all the NORAD warning facilities for the possibility of an invasion, a nuclear invasion, from either Russia or China, and they're worried about it for so many years about that, and they had built this huge underground NORAD facility. And by the way, some of these are like 20 stories down into the ground. We're not talking about a one level. It's like really hard to comprehend. But the NORAD facility, a little while, was taken apart. They took all the high-level electronic tracking devices and equipment and moved it into another air base several miles away. I think it's called the Peterson Air Base, just off the top of my head. All of this, again, is in the DVDs that I'm talking about. Everything we're talking about is covered in the DVD. By the way, it's called Nibiru. The Incoming of Nibiru is what the title of the DVD is. Because what I finally...
that on your website.
Yes. Excuse me?
I was seeing that on your website. Order the new Incoming Nibiru DVD from the store.
Right, and that's the one that literally is 4 hours. It's rather tedious, and believe it or not, we had cut it down like an hour and a half, and I hated to do it. I had to take so much out. But the bottom line is everything will be explained very thoroughly and completely in this DVD. We try to answer every possible question that would come up. Now, let me get back on track. Here's where, so I'm sitting here and I'm saying, well, what would it be that would scare the leaders of all these nations so badly that they actually would be building facilities for themselves with our money, of course, being kept completely secret for the most part, and people kept completely away. You can't go to these. And by the way, I do have a list of the locations of most of the facilities on my website. Where they are in America. But what is it that would ever scare all the leaders of the world to go about creating and spending this money for 20 years? And somebody came to me at a high level and simply said, it's probably Planet X, Nibiru. And I said, I had heard about that, Everybody had heard a little bit about that thing, and it's one of those things where automatically when somebody says, it's called Planet X because that's Roman numeral 10. Actually, it doesn't mean X like in mysterious. It actually means Roman numeral 10 for the 10th planet, and that it's on this huge, elongated orbit going way out past Pluto and then coming back in, and that it's like a 3,000-year orbit, an elliptical orbit, and it will be coming back through. Well, again, like everybody else, I didn't even want to hear it because I thought, this is one of these things that when somebody says it, you expect somebody else, or in the background, you want to listen to, you wanted to hear the spooky music to play background when somebody starts talking about, quote-unquote, Planet X coming back. But the bottom line was this. I asked a couple of people, I said, is there any possibility to it? Is there a truth to this thing? Who's studying this? Where can I find out about this thing? I mean, if this is, and that, because then it did make sense. If, in fact, there was something like a huge, catastrophic, intergalactic kind of a situation on its way in, that did make sense. As crazy as it sounds when you first hear it, but it only sounds crazy if you don't know anything about it. So I spent about 9 months contacting, getting with everybody that ever had written a paper on this thing to find out if it was real, astronomers, and all the stories connected with it. And I found out about a fellow named Sitchin, who back in the 60s had said that he had deciphered 2,000 clay tablets from the nation of Sumeria many years ago. In the 60s, the clay tablets were 4,000 years old, and once they deciphered them, it tells a story in great depth of this Planet X, Nibiru, coming back around every 3,600 years, and that was what caused Noah's floods, and that was what caused all these biblical descriptions of the stars falling from the sky and killing 100,000 soldiers back during the time of the Israelis and all of the biblical references to a thing called wormwood, which is this giant planet that would return every once in a while to destroy and clean off the face of the earth. And so I'll summarize it by saying this. After contacting the people, getting all of the information I could from every possible direction, astronomical, scientific, biblical scholars, etc., I came to the conclusion that there is no question that Nibiru, Planet X, is on its way back in, that Ronald Reagan discovered it, was given the information by his people, and George Bush, approximately 1983. That was when everything started changing. That was when they finalized all these, started finalizing and completing these tunnels. And that's what it is all about. All the money has gone into constructing these survival facilities and filling the facilities with foodstuffs to maintain the elite, limited few that are going to have tickets to get down underground when the stuff is about ready to hit the fan. And when Nibiru comes back around, and by the way, here's the problem. There's nobody in the world yet since I've been talking about this, and now for about 60, 90 days since we've released the DVD, we've not had a single person that can answer the question, why are they building the underground facilities, and why have they filled them with foodstuffs so that they were ready as of last month, as of the beginning of this year. The foodstuffs in the facilities are like 98% done. Why are they putting the foods in today because a lot of people say, oh, it might be 50, 100 years. No, it's not. It's on its way back in. They would not fill it with the foods. They would not be stealing all the gold and stealing all the money and putting it into these underground facilities so that if it happened next week, that they would be able to get underground, okay? And it would be filled. It is already filled. All of them are ready for use. Tonight, as I am speaking, all these facilities are ready. And if there's anybody that can come up with a different reason, I want to know about it. Because here's what's happened. I contacted two major groups, so to speak, that have been doing the following the Planet X thing long before I even knew it existed, I got to tell you. They've been following this thing for long, like 30 years, 20 years. They agree. They disagree on a couple of things, but they agree that it will be coming back probably in less than 5 years. It may be coming back as early as being first seen next December, this coming December.
That's exactly what I heard. An inside source told me that it's likely going to happen at the end of this year.
Yes, here's the and now again there are a couple of disagreements in terms of a lot of little technicalities, and which all make sense, and they all are very intelligently logical and potentially proper. The consensus is the earliest time would be that it would be visually seen in December as a new star in the sky, out there, someplace, wherever, and coming and getting bigger every week. And that it would pass, that's, again, now I'm talking December, January, February, March, and that it would be coming closest to causing the problems to Earth in March and April. All right, so it would be seen in December. It would be coming in, and then what's going to happen, it will, and by the way, this planet is been calculated to be 5 times the size of Earth. So it's pretty big.
3 times.
No, it's physically, well, of course, actually nobody knows. I wouldn't argue. What I'm saying is that the bulk of the guys doing, the astronomers that have done the physical reaction that it has caused, outlying planets, etc., things of that sort, they can calculate mass and blah, blah, blah. Okay, but also going by the description of the size of it that has been documented in every single historic scripture that goes back a couple of thousand years. It's in the Bible. It's in the all the Oriental astronomers actually wrote and tracked it coming around back in the year 10,057. And they kept track of it. They logged it in. The monks on the mountainside in Tibet logged it in. All of these people that have, and the Sumerian clay tablets, all right? And then there's another fantastic piece that I won't get into too much that I do explain in the DVD, but there was a bronze plate that's called the Sky Disk that was located in Germany. In Germany, it is dated to the year 3,600 years ago. 3,600 years ago, they did this disc, and it's the equivalent of, it's about 12 inches across. It's made of bronze and highlighted in gold, laminated in gold. And it shows the solar eclipse, and it's completely dated because it shows the locations of constellations and stars, which in today's computerized astronomy, you can take those stars, feed them into the new computer programs, and it will tell you the exact day to the day that this thing was created. And what it is actually a picture, if you will. You would call it, if it was done with paints, it would be a painting. It is a plaque, a disc plaque, 12 inches across, that has a picture of the sun, the moon, star constellations and their locations, and the fact that it's a solar eclipse taking place. But you can see both the sun and the moon, so they know that it was not the moon doing the eclipse, and it is Nibiru. But the big deal is the exact date of this thing was 3,600 years ago when it was created. It was discovered at an ancient site similar to Stonehenge.
I
only
think
it was
I saw this before. That's
only
right.
it was in Germany, and they had this disc, etc. And I go into all that, and I show it, and I have pictures of it, and all the rest of that business at the museum, and da-da-da-da-da. All of that is also in the, it's one of the reasons that the DVD set is 4 hours. It's because I wanted to cover everything that's connected, and I start out with the money and come right on up to the day that this is expected to be coming back. So the people that have been studying it from an astronomical science view have decided, first off, again, we get back to size, calculated it to be, okay, well, I'm going to really put it this way, that it's either 3 to 5 times size, but the feeling is it's probably as big as 5 times the size of Earth. It also has like 4 moons of its own. It's like a secondary system with 4 moons traveling with it and coming back together as a group. Now, the devastating part of this thing is a combination of things. There will not be a collision of it hitting Earth. That's not going to happen, period. I mean, it might, but that's not the feeling. But it will cause an eclipse of the sun at one point in time, at least. When it comes in, it will come in and go around the sun, the same as a typical comet will do. Halley's Comet comes in every 75 years, goes around the sun, goes back out, and he doesn't come back for 75 years. There was a comet that was discovered a few years ago, was called the Hale-Bopp Comet. It came close by, passed behind the sun in 1997, if I'm not mistaken, and it came 97, went around, and went back out. Now that one, and this is important, that one is on a 4,200-year orbit. And the reason I say it's important was when I first heard that the Nibiru would be possibly a 3,000-year comet, or a 3,000-year orbit, not being tremendously schooled in astronomy at that time, I thought, that's kind of goofy. You're trying to tell me this thing goes out, 1,850 years and then comes back 1,850 years, to constitute a 3,000-year orbit. I said, that sounds stupid. But when I found out that the Hale-Bopp is on a longer one of 4,200 years, well, then I was wrong. That's not stupid because it's a reality in terms of the traveling of a comet. Now, this thing is not a comet. I have to reiterate this. So its tail, and this thing will have a tremendous tail dragging behind it of space junk, meteorites, and big pieces of rock and what have you being dragged along behind this thing. Believe it or not, Halley's Comet, the tail is 24 million miles long. Now, the Nibiru tail, which again is not going to be frozen ices and pieces of dirt, it's going to be meteors and meteorites, if you will. When it comes in, passes around the sun, then the Earth on its regular orbit will pass through the tail 2 times. So we will be bombarded with asteroids and things of that sort, pretty good-sized stuff, 2 different times. The first time when it goes around behind the sun, and then we will pass through the tail. And then we will continue going around. It will pass and most likely go back out again.
Guys, it's good. So that's a good thing about having 2 co-hosts in case something does happen that doesn't totally prevent me from starting the show. Like the last time we had tonight's guest that was supposed to come on, I believe it was a DOS attack that we had, and I couldn't do anything, and it was unfortunate that I had to cancel. But we got him back on. So we would like to welcome Bob Fletcher to the show. Bob, how's it going?
Okay, are you hearing me all right?
I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, that's good. Sounds that's exciting compared to the last 10 minutes here. Okay.
So, all right. Hello, Bob.
Very good. Where are we going? I don't have any idea at this point in time. Do you want me to? Would you like me to give an introduction to those folks who may not know who I am at all, or what direction would you like to go?
Absolutely. If you want to if you want to tell everyone who you are and everything, it's all you right now, Mr. Fletcher.
Okay,
yeah, man. What's your story?
I greatly appreciate it. Basically, for those folks who don't know who I am, I've been doing congressional and senatorial investigations for probably 20 years, basically chasing corrupted persons in our government. And that's started out a long time ago. I won't go into all of the background of how I got involved with that, but I became a federal witness in that 1985-87 period of time with the Iran-Contra inquiries, for those of you that are old enough to recall that, as a matter of fact, because that's been about 25 years ago, I guess, at this time. And I'd gotten mixed up into the middle of Iran-Contra Central Intelligence, supplying of weapons and drugs, et cetera, with by simply merging my company with an existing company in Atlanta, Georgia, that in fact was a covert front for supplying of weapons for all these random wars that the intelligence agencies of the United States like to maintain worldwide. And, of course, lining the pockets of all those guys that are supplying the weapons on the behalf of our, what I refer to the secret government, so to speak, has nothing to do with the people that you think are running the United States. And that's been a real roller coaster ride for myself. What happened was that I was, like I say, we merged our company. All of a sudden, I was in the middle of this stuff, and I couldn't believe what was going on. These guys, including major generals, et cetera, coming in and out of my company, which, by the way, was a toy company. And the idea was for them to use the toy company as a covert front for all this crazy stuff that they're doing on a regular basis. And to my surprise, once we got into investigating it, myself and my lawyer, in an attempt to reclaim my business, which they had basically taken over and completely stolen. When I got into it, we found out that they do this stuff all the time, that they actually will take companies over and use them as reasons for visiting a country or going in and out of countries, et cetera, and carrying out their supplying of the weapons and all. So if you guys have any questions, I would jump in, please, if you will, if you have anything you want to ask. But the main point of today's program on my side of it is to let people know that there is an extremely radical element that is on the offing, and that is Planet X, which is, and some people call it Nibiru. A couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, after doing 25 to 27 years of investigations into government fraud and theft and all of the related bandits that are running the country up there, and being involved directly with about 8 or 10 of some of the biggest investigations in the last 20 years, I realized that we were missing huge amounts of money, much more money than what is normally vanishing out of Washington, D.C., into the pockets of those guys that are on the bad side of the fence. We had gotten used to chasing multi-millions dollars of financing that and fraud, bank fraud, and like I say, the sales of weapons and the exchange for weapons right out of the White House with drug dealers on a huge scale. And we got used to investigating that, but all of a sudden it dawned on me that we were starting to lose much more money, and I couldn't figure out how that money where it could go, because we're talking trillions of dollars, not even millions or billions, but a couple of major persons in our government had admitted that trillions had disappeared out of their budgets, and they had no idea where it was going. You guys there? Are you guys still on the line there, or you fall asleep?
Yeah, sorry.
Did I lose you?
No,
oh.
I had myself.
Okay, go ahead.
I was trying to talk. I was like, wait a second, what's wrong?
I didn't
man. Keep going.
Excuse me?
Absolutely. So how I guess to what level is this still going on today? I mean,
Okay. Well, here's the point. This is what happened. About 3 years ago, when I had information coming across my desk as it related to this giant sums of money vanishing. No longer were we talking about a senator or a congressman pulling off some kind of a scam one way or another to get a couple $1 million for his summer house in Tahiti or something like that. We were looking at, to my shock, Donald Rumsfeld, who was in charge of the Defense Department at this particular point in time, on the day before the 9/11 event took place. He was sitting answering questions before a congressional committee with whom I had done work, and he said that over the last few years, it's been realized that $2.3 trillion had vanished from the Defense Department budget. It's just unaccounted for. And we're talking with a T, $1 trillion. And that's mind-boggling, because you can't even money launder $1 trillion. How would you ever even do that? If it was just a regular theft of, like I say, of a few million, that's one thing. But for $2.3 trillion to vanish out of their budgeting at the Defense Department is like mind-boggling. And they're also talking about the timing here. Now, this was the day before the 9/11